G'day guys and welcome, my name is Michael and I'm the DeadAussieGamer and welcome to Dead Aussie Review, where I review some of the tabletop role-playing games that I have had the absolute pleasure of reading, running and playing in my course of time as a professional game master. Now, today we're going to be continuing our look at Through the Breach with one of its expansions, From Nightmares. Now, the From Nightmares book, it allows players to delve into the roles of monstrous characters called Neverborn. There are 4 different types that you can play, which are of course the Mimics, the Woes, the Nightmares, and the Nephilim, each of which have their own host of demonic powers and abilities. But of course, is that all that's in this book? Is it going to be good for you? And should you add it to your Through the Breach collection? Well, today we're going to be having a look and discussing that. Now, this is not a overview or a breakdown of what's in this book. Again, I will probably do those videos, and if I do, links will be below. This is just a big, broad look at the book, what I thought of it, and of course, whether or not I think you should be adding it to your collection. There is something I will share, of course, and that is where I begin most of my explorations of, kind of these kind of expansions, and that is what's inside. So, boop. Look at that. One of the earliest chapters tells you what's inside the actual book, and I'm going to go through this to tell you what I thought of each of the chapters. The introduction, fantastic. It's great. It has this page on it. Chapter 2, The Neverborn. Now, The Neverborn, if you actually follow the Through the Breach lore, have actually had a long-standing mystery surrounding their actual history. There has been very little information about the Neverborn, where they come from, what the true origins of their background has been, but this book answers all those questions, and for that alone, I would buy this book. I'm a very big fan of the Through the Breach narrative, and the Neverborn have had such mysteries and questions about them for the longest time, and so many of them get answered in this chapter. More importantly, it also brings up a bunch of other questions. I don't want to spoil any of it because I want people to go read it, but there are just so many different things, including another mysterious Neverborn race that's lurking around somewhere, or maybe lurking around somewhere, or maybe not. Who knows? I'm not going to spoil it, but, you know, there's a whole other thing going on there. And yeah, oh my god, like I fell in love with that chapter. One of the reasons why this review came so late was because I read every single word. I devoured that chapter. So high marks on that. I think it was definitely very, very heavily narrative driven. And yeah, like I said, I'd buy this book just for that. Chapter 3 is, of course, the denizens of Malifaux, playing Neverborn themselves, how to create these characters. Like with all Through the Breach expansions, it has its own unique tarot with its own unique tarot system. I'll give you a brief rundown, but this, again, I'll do a character video making thing, video, selection, below type, yeah. So what is involved? Basically, the Bloodline Tarot, as it's called, is, again, in the same fashion, a series of cards that you would then use to allocate your skills and your stats. However, what you have in addition to your trail is you also have several Discord cards. Now, the Discordance cards can then basically be used to replace cards along the track, and if you replace those cards, they then add a burden of madness to your character, driving them slightly insane. It's a very interesting system, very, very easy to understand. The bit that gets a little bit kind of crunchy is surrounding the actual type of Neverborn you pick when you do this bloodline. There are 4 different types, which are, of course, the demonic Nephilim, the nightmares, the embodiments of negative emotions, known as woe, and the shape-changing mimics. Picking one of these affords you access to what's known as the Gifts of Darkness. The Gifts of Darkness are basically general traits that you can get for your character, and as you level up, you can, instead of taking a general trait, you can gain more Gifts of Darkness for your character. It's a little crunchy, but it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Probably my only feedback here would probably be there is definitely a power slide that's happened. If you compare what you get from the other books, especially when you compare it to the core rule book, the Gifts of Darkness and the powers that associate with it are actually quite chunky. even compared to some of the pursuits that are available. So while it's very, very unique, versatile, and opens up a different area of the game that previously didn't exist, if you're playing in a group with Neverborn and non-Neverborn, you may want to just obviously keep an eye on things like the power curve, because that was one of the things I felt straight away was, yeah, Neverborn characters are so powerful. They're really strong. Yeah. Next chapter is obviously the pursuits, which, for those of you who have not played through the Breach, in which case, why are you watching the expansion? The pursuits are basically your class, and there are a series of them, which each, I think, add a nice uniqueness to the game. I'm just going to very quickly go through those basic pursuits, which are here. You've got the Boogeyman, who stalks its prey and, hunts them down. All in all, I thought it was a really, really cool little class. I was in the playtest, and there was an original part of it where that you had to fight in a specific block or a neighborhood. I'm so glad that they didn't go with that, and instead the Boogeyman is more of a hunter of individuals. He is what I would like to call a boss killer. You pick a target and you specialize in bringing that target tons of fear and pain. The Harrowed is a very interesting class. It is fundamentally a guardian character, somebody who martyrs themselves or put themselves on the line for others. I love support characters in general. I think the Harrowed opens in a very interesting thing, especially story-wise. If you are a Neverborn who is protecting particularly humans, that could be a very interesting story. So I like it when there's a bit of narrative that's been thrown into these kind of builds and classes. In addition, there are tons of other class pursuits that fall in line with that. So, for example, the Guardsman would be very interesting to see how a Guardsman multi-class or multi-pursuit with the Harrowed would function and how strong that would be. You then have the Manifester, which I think is the most powerful pursuit in this book. You can do anything from summoning and conjuring imaginary friends who are peons or minions from any book, to actually manifesting real objects in your hand. You can't manifest overly powerful or unique objects, but you can, as in the book says, you can pull out a gun out of thin air, which I think could be very, very fun and very stylistically cool. Like this gunslinger riding on the prairie, just reaching in through a portal and just pulling out a shotgun or something, or throwing his shotgun into the air, having it disappear, and then pulling out 2 pistols. There could be some very cool stylistic things happening there. So great vibes, great thing, and very easy to understand, I feel. It almost plays effectively like your basic spellcaster with just almost like an entire different spell subtype, manifesting. So that's kind of cool. The Cutthroat. I wasn't overly impressed with the Cutthroat, to be honest. In fact, I kind of felt a little bit like I was let down by the Cutthroat, but let me explain why. Great fighter, great combat class. But we have great fighters and great combat classes. We have the Scrapper, we have the Boogeyman, we have a whole bunch of people who make use of close combat in order to seize the advantage in battle. The Cutthroat for me was, it does have a few unique elements to it, but allowing speed, might, and grace to become interchangeable for close quarters combat, for me, kind of didn't help my feelings towards the heavy speed stack in this game. Now, what I mean by that is, through the Breach, speed is probably one of the most efficient and effective ways to do close quarter combat, because speed feeds into not only your initiative order, which is how fast you can act, it also feeds into your defense, it feeds into your actual movement speed and your charge speed, and if you use martial arts, it'll feed into your attack as well. And there are lots of little things that you can actually do, such as getting, just tons and tons of bonuses, general talents, even specific feats and triggers that make the martial artist speed build a very deadly close quarter combatant. With Cutthroat allowing you to interchange that to use melee weapons and to use a whole bunch of other close quarter stuff. I don't know if that was entirely necessary. It's probably like I said, of all of them, it's the one I like the least. The Breach Burned was a very crunchy read. I had to read it a few times to get a hold of it, but it's a very unique thing. And that is because it plays around with the twist deck that you have in order to try and seize an advantage for yourself. These are very, very character-heavy pursuits. So the Breachburned are people who have, of course, sort of been burned by the aether energies that exist in Malifaux. And as such, they are able to do some very unique things. It felt almost like you had to have a few different hands going at the same time. You have your Hand of Fate, which you use to cheat fate. You had your Control Hand, which you used to activate your Breachburned abilities. And then you had your Twist deck, which you churn through and filter stuff out of. So I was kind of... it was kind of hit and miss on that one. I was like, I like it. I like the style. I like the feel. I like the uniqueness to it. I wouldn't recommend it to new players. I would recommend it to veteran players or people who are interested in playing a wastrel that want to look at adding a little bit extra to their character. Next up is the Behemoth. Now, nothing needs to be said. The Behemoth is a powerhouse. It is the Juggernaut. You want to play the Juggernaut from the X-Men movies? Play a Behemoth. Holy crap. They just destroy everything with brute strength and brute force. As you go through, eventually you just learn how to demolish things with your presence. It's nuts and very cool. The Painkiller is the last one. Now, the Painkiller was interesting because it capitalizes on you being not at your best, you being on half hit points, or you being, having your head knocked in, you having an easier time staying awake or staying alive rather than falling unconscious when you're on low hit points. Those elements, I think, could be applicable anywhere. You don't have to kind of take the nightmarish version of, it's a painkiller. But really, you could see like a guardsman or even a close quarter combatant taking painkiller and just being good at not going down, like having that extra little bit of, gumption in the tank just to be able to pull through. And I'm very interested to see how the very enduring Drudge interacts with the painkiller as well. So those are the base pursuits and what I think of them. Now, there are advanced pursuits, but I'm not going to go into them in detail. Primarily because I don't think there's really a need to. There are, of course, a number of them. The Primordial, who focuses on connecting to the land. The Neverborn Hunter, who I think would make an excellent Nephilim Hunter, if you are familiar with the guild and all them. Because they get so many bonuses about hunting the Neverborn. You then have the Black Blood Shaman, who is, of course, the shamanistic ritual magic thing, who has such a powerful freaking spell called it's like the last word of the tyrant, and its minimum damage is 6 on a spell that it uses. It does cost 5 cards from your twist deck, but boom, baby. It's one of the last powers you get, and it's so good. Then you have the Puppeteer, who I was very interested in, not only because the Puppeteer is just awesome, but also because it comes with rules on how to build puppet characters. So it doesn't matter if you're playing a human, a gremlin, or whatever, there's actually a way and a method for you to use what's called the Headliner pursuit, or it's like a Headliner monster pursuit, in order to give yourself a talent called It's Alive, have all the build stuff that you have for your character, and then it's a puppet. It's a puppet as well. So that was very cool. And lastly, the Autumn Night... what was it called? The Autumn Night... Oh, it's escaping me. Hold on. I've got it right here. The Autumn Night... Oh, the Supplicant of Autumn. That's the one. So the Supplicant of Autumn is, of course, one of the minions of Titania, the Autumn Court Queen, and it gives you a bunch of options to categorize a combat class around each of the different seasons. So winter focuses on armor and strength. Spring is about regeneration. Path of Summer is about, kind of your movement and your ability to navigate through a terrain, and of course autumn is kind of like your spell casting and kind of like your ground control, being able to manipulate the way around you. Spell casting, yeah. All right, that is the various pursuits and the like, and what is in it. What else is in this book? Well, look, when it comes down to it, we have the talents and magic section, which I think adds a bunch of really cool and interesting stuff. There were 2 new schools of magic, which are really cool. One focuses on very similar to the old ways that the giants use, and another is, of course, the runic magics that are available to them. A lot of the spells, I felt like there were a lot of equivalents throughout the other expansions. Maybe that was just me. I'd have to sit down and really kind of find those specific spells, but I'm fairly sure Into the Bayou had like a dominate spell, and then we see another one in here, and there were a couple of more like that. So with very few spells being added to any expansion book, because obviously Through the Breach is a low to mid-range magic setting, yeah, I wasn't sure how I felt about that. But, you know, still some cool content there. More importantly, you can create grimoires now in this, and that was something very powerful. For those of you who didn't know, grimoires are magic books or magic items that allow people to tap into magic spells. Yeah, that's basically it. And prior to this, you start with one and your Fate Master has to give them to you. Whereas in this book, now there are rules surrounding how to actually make your own grimoire. So that's very exciting. Very, very exciting. Then we have the equipment, which of course, bunch of really, really cool equipment. It was really nice to see some magic items, even in the book Into Steam, which is supposed to be the Arcanist book, where the Arcanists are kind of the spellcasters. There was like cyborgs, cybernetics, augmentations, and of course some magic. This one's just got tons and tons of cool magic stuff as well. So that was very exciting. And lastly, the Bestiary, where we get to see tons of Maliflora and Malifauna throughout the book. I think one of the most interesting things is seeing versatilities in species. So there are many different types of the Nephilim that are covered in this. And look, more ammunition for the Fate Master is always great. But where does that put us on the review? Well, let's start with the basic. Simplicity. Is this simple and easy to understand? Well, I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 5 because while it is very, very simple to digest and to read, there are a number of points where it made references to other books. Now, maybe it's just me, this could just be my personal opinion, but if you add something to a book, even if it's the core rule book, you need to make sure it's in there. If the reference is, hey, by the way, go and read this book for that, in the case of the Manifester, there was, go check the other books for this, you know, because that's where a lot of the early Neverborns were, that's fine. But, you know, it wouldn't have killed to have, like, a couple of little examples of, hey, here's a couple of examples of what's needed there. The breach burn was another thing that was a little bit too complex, and I think, you know, without practice, things like the character building surrounding the Discordance cards, the Gift of Darkness, and of course the Burden of Madness, they can be a little bit crunchy, or at least crunchier than what I think is accustomed to this particular system. So Simplicity gets a 3.5. The bonuses that led it up, I guess, were that some of the more complex and some of the most versatile elements of this, i.e. some of my favorite bits of it, were actually quite simple. So there you go. So the only bits that are crunchy are the bits that, you know, in any case, I was like, okay, you know, it's neither here nor there. Next up, we look at versatility. What versatility does this book add to our core game? This book adds just tons, so much. Oh my god! Like let's ignore the lore for a second that comes through, but the versatility of the different types of pursuits we get, a whole bunch of new magic items, whole bunch of new monsters, whole bunch of new augmented classes, advanced classes and the like. There is just so much to be able to play with. And, you know, while we add the Neverborn as a single race in Through the Breach, there is something to be said about the fact that there are 4 subspecies. So even when you play gremlins, for example, there's only one type of gremlin. When you play undead, there's really only one type of undead. This is one of the first books that they've released that have gone, here are the Neverborn, here are 4 different types of Neverborn. 5 if you include the Half-Bloods. So lots of versatility here. You know, nearly full marks on it. Only reason they don't get full marks is because I want more spells. Next up is narrative. Again, 4.5. 4.5 because there's just, I've just been prattling on about it. I don't need to go into it much more, do I? Do I? No? Okay. Where did the 0.5 go? The 0.5 went away surrounding literally just some of the bits and pieces for the flavors of some of the advanced pursuits and the like. I wanted to know more. I wanted a little bit more to be able to understand, like, what is the hierarchy of the Autumn Court? How do I play someone who is a supplicant of Autumn? What does it mean to actually be traveling around as members of them? Because if I'm going to be playing in a game where I'm playing a Neverborn, I want a little bit more information about how to be a Neverborn in Malifaux, which I think was the only tiny bit that was missing. That being said, it is what you make of it, and you as a player have every opportunity to make that your own personal style. Appearance. Book is amazing. Book is pretty. Book is absolutely wonderful. It is also not too thick, which makes it easy to digest. And in addition, the layout is very simple and comes with this really cool content page that I showed off. So yeah, easy, lemon squeezy. Balance. Is it balanced with the rest of the adventure? Nah. Look, I'm going to be honest. I don't think there is anything I can compare to when it comes to how powerful the Neverborn are. When tied together with some particular combinations from this book specifically, without the use of other books, it would be very hard for me to imagine a power grading where let's say a Drudge, which is a very, very strong and powerful core pursuit, could match up to something like the Behemoth. Or even something as technical and savvy as the animator, who creates little tiny constructs and stuff like that, can keep up with the manipulator, who can just go and summon a creature. It's very easy to see a lot of things that they have learnt over the time become very, very relevant here, and they've utilized it to the best of their abilities. But it has left some of this stuff from the previous releases in the dust, in my opinion. So there you go. All in all, I'd say that this is a great book, and if I'm being deadly honest, I think it probably should be the first, if not the second, expansion book that you should pick up if you are looking at getting into Through the Breach. It is fantastic. It is wonderful. It is available on DriveThruRPG. You can find a link in the description below if you would like that, or if you want to get a hard copy, it is also available. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with us today. If you have any questions that you'd like me to go over, or things you'd like me to look at in more detail, leave a comment in the description below. Of course, always hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, bang on that bell if you want to hear more stuff coming through. And till next time, guys, and the next time we see you on this side of the breach, game hard, or die trying. Good night.